So, lilacs. There are regular lilacs that are, people say lilac trees, but they don't start out that way. They look like a shrubby plant, and that they grow and they get to be about 8 to 10 feet at some point. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about dwarf lilacs, mostly Korean lilacs, and that they stay more of a landscape shrub foundation plant size of about 4 to 6 feet. They can be trimmed. They sometimes get to be about 4 to 6 feet wide. So they're, it's a kind of think of an azalea on steroids, but it's deciduous. Now, the Myery Pablin is probably the most known, without you knowing it, because it doesn't have a really good name to it, variety of dwarf lilac. Spreading lilac, reddish-purple buds that open to fragrant, pale lilac flowers. Blooms like crazy, usually mid-May. And that it's one of those plants that if you looked at it in April, you'd say, oh, I think it's dead. But it blooms at an early age. Looks great in like a landscape border, a background to like a perennial garden. It forms like a low hedge, and it is deciduous. It loses its leaves. Now, the second most known dwarf lilac is Miss Kim, and it grows a little slower, and it's about 6 foot tall eventually with age. And I always love the question we get at Bloomers where we're in the nursery, and how big does it get? And the question really is, in whose lifetime? Because if you're looking at a dawn redwood, which we're going to discuss later in the show, that will get to be gigantic, but you and I will never see it. There's General Sherman, which is in the redwood forest in California. I mean, it's like you can't. 20 feet wide? It's crazy. Crazy. So with that, if you have whether it's Miss Kim or any variety of dwarf lilac, after they bloom, you can cut them back. So don't worry about it getting too big. And it blooms later. Miss Kim blooms a little bit later than other lilacs. Like everything blooms in the spring. You've got hydrangeas, you've got azaleas, but you have to kind of wait for Miss Kim after those guys are done, and then Miss Kim will start to open up. Best part of lilacs is their fragrance, and it extends the season. Again, it has those purple buds and has highly fragrant lavender blue flowers. And in the fall, the foliage, you get a little benefit where the foliage turns a little burgundy. And very hardy, and also it's one of those things where we always worry about what our hardiness zone is. This is one of those plants that they can grow down south because it has excellent powdery mildew resistance. Great for borders, mass plantings, again, deciduous. But again, the variety is resistant to that powdery mildew. And if you've ever had regular lilacs and they're older, sometimes in the summer, you all of a sudden get a powder that coats all the leaves, and then that starts to really kind of peter out. It's sometimes a shame because it looks as if it's killing the plant. Now, there's a variety called Baby Kim, and that Baby Kim, also fragrant, but it's the smallest lilac to date. But you get a lot of flower power in that small area. It's a glossy dark green foliage and an abundance of fragrant purple blooms that don't fade to white, and has a useful rounded habit that fits into just about any sunny spot. It brings the joy of lilacs into a neater, tidier package so you can enjoy the flower and the fragrance without having to have a big plant. So we're talking how big? 2 to 2.5 foot square, basically. Now, how about Boomerang lilac? That's a proven winner. Boomerang lilac, it doesn't flower. It's called Boomerang for a reason, that it doesn't flower just once. You get regular bloom cycles. Now, it's periodic, so it's not going to bloom continually all summer long, but it will go through cycles where it will bloom on its new growth and set bud there and then bloom. So we're talking about midsummer into fall. It's a bit smaller than other regular lilacs, and this has a look more like the traditional lilac, 4 to 6 feet, and also has a nice rounded shape, and it looks good anywhere. The star-like flowers are beautiful. Classic lilac purple are sweetly scented, and that's the actual blossoms, but it has that traditional cluster lilac look. They are disease resistant. No worries about brown foliage to spoil the show, and it's sun-loving, and one thing that we hadn't mentioned, it's deer resistant. Something I personally need to pay more attention to. It does rebloom, and again, it doesn't bloom once. It keeps going. Let's see, fragrance. Fragrance is unmistakable, where it is a pollinator on top of that. So we're talking about everything from bees to butterflies. Hummingbirds will visit it, but it's primarily more for the insect side of pollinators. And it is just a great plant. If you want to prune it to keep it smaller, you do so immediately after the spring bloom. So like the first bloom that you get in spring, right after that, and it's done blooming, that's when you cut it back. Never, ever cut lilacs back in fall, winter, or early spring. What you'll end up doing is you remove all the flower buds, and then you're going, how come my lilac never blooms? And it's because you're cutting off all the flowers at the wrong time. So right after it blooms is the best way to go ahead and prune them. And again, it's springtime bloom, not like, oh, it's blooming in, I don't know, say it rotates back to blooming in August. Not then. It's that first blossom. Then you cut it back after those blossoms fade. Okay. And then it will bloom. And we've talked about this already on the show about hydrangeas for sure. It blooms on its new wood. So what you're going to do, that old wood blossom that you get first in spring, that's what you cut back after its blooms begin to fade. Let's see. We got, again, a light trim after the seed head develops. Like you just go ahead and cut those seed heads off. That's okay. That's okay. And it's just a great plant. So again, that is, for Proven Winners credit, they launched Boomerang and with a big fanfare a bunch of years ago. So long ago, I can't even remember. And Martha Stewart was behind it, and they were pushing it. It's like, wow, this thing is great. Quite frankly, it turned out the plant stunk. So they pulled it off the market and did some more hybridizing, did some more work with the plant, and got it to the point where it is now. It is a viable option for those who want lilacs. So it's not just let's throw it out there and make it so that it's going to be, sold, and we don't really care how the plant does. But again, lilacs are a terrific pollinator. It is resistant to deer. It gives you a fragrance like no other plant, and it just is something that you always have room for, no matter how big your garden is. You can go with the Dwarf Korean varieties, or you can go with a standard variety that's on the small side, like the Boomerang. Or you could go with the shrub type that grows into a tree, which is the typical standard lilac that you would think of. Either way, it's a great plant. Go look for them at your garden center this weekend.